Hey the rulers, DMO73 here, bringing you the deck profile for Crossing Point Alhamaat, the way I think the big old mean wizard should be played. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to pre-order upcoming Force of Will sets, ccgprime.com for singles and supplies, cardodoko.com for those rulers in the international market looking for product, as well as our guest lecturer members Vite Ramen and Full Grammar Alchemist. Class is in session. So here is the deck profile. As always, you can find a link to it in the description down below. And don't forget to get your pre-orders in for 10 Oaths with Odyssey Games. You can check that out in the description as well as the information about FowFest happening the first weekend of June 2025. We will not want to miss you there. So we're just going to be talking about Wanderer, primarily because Crossing Point is banned in Paradox for obvious reasons. But we're going to be using Alhamaat here for this deck profile. The main reason I like it for a Crossing Point deck is with Crossing Point, you want to play a bunch of different chants, which means we can play a bunch of different ancient magics, which work great because Alhamaat doesn't really care about your stone base because he can cast the ancient magics pretty easily. You get to do some pretty silly things here alongside his Fate card, which is really nice, specifically that you get to make. One thing that we did get wrong in the commentary in the things is that the on your Regalia side, it doesn't give Dragonoid to your J ruler, so unfortunately the Crossing Point line that I did there with Long Shadow in the feature match wouldn't have worked, but I could have just animated. There was a lot of whole things that worked out there that probably would have still not changed the results. But you do have access to not a ton of resonators in the deck, but enough that, like, even having just like you saw one resonator on board with Long Shadow is enough to generate a board of suddenly having 10 resonators. So you don't really need that many to survive, and you're a heavy spellslinger deck, which makes it very interesting because you can sideboard things like Spirit of the Mirage Ruins because you're not playing a lot of resonators. So Spirit of the Mirage Ruins can be helpful to do some things there too based on the matchup, and then you can try to find a way to sacrifice it. You can also play things like Suya, Lumia, that kind of stuff in the board. So because we want to get stuff expelled as fast as possible, we're going to be making use of Shutulkin, which works really nicely for being able to tap and expel, filter through, especially since we're also going to be probably foreseeing to the bottom frequently. So you can kind of foresee the card and then say, well, I would want that in hand, so I'll put it to the bottom, and then Shutulkin can expel it and draw me a card. So you can do a lot of stuff with manipulation there. We're also playing Solar Painter of the Court. This gives all your stuff barrier, which is really nice, but also makes all of your ancient magics darkness, which is what we want because we want Deadeye to be able to make them quick cast and remnant. So you can get some pretty silly things from there. A couple things to note is that it's very easy for Alhamaat to get this out because your first stone call is probably going to get you a mana counter. You can then burn 2 mana counters to play Deadeye, and then Deadeye will generate you a mana counter at the end of the turn. So it's kind of always going to be cast on one Alhamaat going first or second, which is very, very easy, which is great. And then you get to do silly things like Viola's Machinations, a quick cast and remnant, rip your opponent's hands to shreds. And because we're not a wind ruler, we get to do things like play Curse Mirror of the Snake or High Speed Uppercut. And then you see we have some ways to answer Regalia with things like Claims by the Depths. We can refill our hands with things like Dive to the Sunken Nation. And so from there, you're just kind of playing good spells.deck with some crazy stuff like Sympathy of Fire and Wind, since it's an ancient magic, can be used to ramp, which essentially refunds itself because that stone you're grabbing sets you up for being able to do get a free mana counter. You can play the one of Gravestone of Haunted Palace and set that up really nicely like you saw in the feature match. You get to play Mirrors, New Plans, Rune of Souls to find whatever you want. A Strange Miracle is great when it has quick cast and remnant. Ancient Heartfelt Fire to help you get to a ramped Alhamaat. There's some, these are some spicy things that you don't really need to play. Rachel Smile, you could easily find something different instead. World Flame Summoning, same kind of thing. Spinning Aquasoul is nice to be able to buy something back. And then, like you saw, a really nice Forgotten Amphitheater, which was really helpful just to be able to answer those particular situations. You see I'm sideboarding a couple extra copies of it as well. Sealed Stone of Ega is also a spell that feels very, very good for this deck. Just being able to have an untouchable clear the biggest thing off the board because it doesn't have a ton of spot removal in the deck. So we go from there. You could also play some like Mikage Reyes in this deck to try to set up Locked Glass Tomb if you want. That could get you a Dragon Shadow element right? Certainly something that you could do if you want to play some more bodies in this pretty easily. Would be a good setup there. Loki's Insight, Arrival of the Conqueror. These are just the good spells that we've seen before. And then lastly, again, you're playing a couple copies of Long Shadow and a single copy of Apathy as kind of your main kind of close out the game win con pieces. The reason why Long Shadow is that kind of finishing touch piece is because, again, you'd be giving it the bonus from Crossing Point. So you make a bajillion tokens out of just having 1 or 2 resonators, and then suddenly they're all huge, and then you just kill your opponent, especially considering the fact that this will have quick cast or remnants, and you can do all kinds of silly stuff there to set it up for being the most successful possible. You could even do something like play an Apathy on your opponent's turn to neg their board, and then cast Long Shadow so that you don't have to worry about something like a Muse Staring At, or a Muse Spirit, or an Alabaster Dragon Shaman. Like, you can just make sure that this stuff is gonna resolve. So pretty silly stuff that you can do with there. One thing to note just in general is that again, with Ancient Magics, you are producing the will to cast these cards, so that means that they get to dodge stuff like Mirror. Like, you play World Flame Summoning, you play Alhamaat's Shadow, you play Sympathy of Fire and Wind. You're actually producing the will for them, so it means they dodge things that stop you from like getting punished for playing fewer mana or stuff like that. So it's pretty good. So yeah, that is the list. Kind of the first take. You see we have the cheeky one of Sideboard Black Moonbeam, because, you know, it's Alhamaat, so we might as well. But let me know what you guys have been trying with Alhamaat, if you've been doing something a little bit different. I really had a really good time with this list. It felt very solid, like a nice way to upgrade him, and really had some good staying power based on, you know, what your local meta is. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. And until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.